An observation was offered by Trick0171. He says, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, that he doesn't think that we can have an outside perspective through detachment in any sense that it can give freedom or responsibility, that nothing can reach outside of cause and effect. He believes that such an outside perspective is important for the progression of humankind, but it is the idea that it can give freedom and responsibility that does not make sense. Being detached does not mean that the detached person is detached from cause and effect, but only from physical driving forces. He makes a distinction between progression and freedom. Progression in his eyes is the important thing. One breaking into some sort of freedom is not the important thing, nor is it possible. That is Trick0171's perspective. And this perspective observation is appreciated. But it is observation that reinforces self-awareness, the idea of a self. You say that it does not make sense to you, but it's not supposed to make sense. I know you are a reasonable man, but I'm asking you to be unreasonable. Within consciousness, within existence, not everything is going to be able to be converted through the tool of logic, reason, and common sense. These are limited tools designated to a limited playing field. The known is the playing field that logic and reason are applied to. The unknown, reason and logic has to adapt to that, and sometimes it does and sometimes it can't. And then there is the unknowable, which cannot be filtered through logic and reason. So the implications of all that is will always be at odds with logic and reason. The breakdown of logic and reason is the recognition of paradoxical truths. So it's never really ever expected to make sense. But before we go any further, what we can do is take the word freedom and toss it right out the window. Freedom or enslavement are only things that apply to within the known. They are inventory items within an inventory, details within borders. So to say that one would gain an item from the inventory by detaching from the inventory would be inaccurate. What consciousness actually moves into when it detaches cannot be described by anything within the inventory. You can't explain it because its very nature is unexplainable. So to say that one gains freedom would not be correct. The only thing that could be said to be true regarding freedom is that consciousness would be free from one context by moving into another context. And this is what's always going on. Consciousness transcending, enlightening itself, and moving to another level. And this never stops. The only time it could be said to be stopped is if consciousness goes into a dormant state. But even then, it has not stopped, because in a state of the unmanifested, manifestation will manifest again. And this is another thing that should be clarified. It's not so much the path to enlightenment than it is the path of enlightenment. The goal is never where the path leads. The goal is the path. The objective is not to follow the path to enlightenment, but to be on the path of enlightenment. For so long as you are on the path, you are achieving your goal. It's only when you get off the path that consciousness could be said to be stagnant or regressing. But the very thrust of consciousness is progression, and nothing can stop this because it is like a great and mighty river. And the only way you can stop a river is if mankind puts up a dam. And this is what consciousness does within self-awareness to prevent detachment. People have willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly, constructed dams that impedes the flow of their consciousness. But just like the river, if given enough time, no dam will ever stop a river. The river will eventually erode and destroy any dam. And the same could be said true for consciousness. And over time, what does mankind do to prevent the river from overcoming the dam? Reinforcing the dam. And the same could be said true for consciousness and self-awareness. We reinforce the dams to maintain self-awareness, to sustain an idea of a self. So what can we learn from self-awareness? What is to be taken from this experience with self-awareness? And I would say the main lesson to be learned, the key feature to the tool of self-awareness, is that you can create something and then reflect upon the creation. A burst of vibration in nothingness that can be recognized. Cause and effect. Energetic manifestation, visual reflections are seen. Hands clap, sound is heard. An instrument taking an action will produce a result, causes and conditions. Now, if one can say that through attachment, a conscious point of perception can be caught up in cause and effect, then why can't one also say that through detachment, a conscious point of perception can break out of cause and effect? Yes, it is true that you are a perspective inside a context of cause and effect, but the belief that no other context or no other perspective is possible only serves to reinforce the boundaries of the context of self-awareness. Cause and effect is not the be-all and end-all. There is a lesson to be taken from it, and you move on. To say that the context that self-awareness has established is the only context, and the only room for progression is within that context, then you're really just locked into a context, anchored to a perspective, a reinforced dam stopping a river. So yes, there is a context beyond cause and effect. The question is how you're going to get there. And the only real way to get there is through detachment. And so, is detachment a choice? Does one choose to detach? I wish it was that simple. You can't just choose it, because the problem is self-aware consciousness has been conditioned since birth to have its particular perspective. Getting out of that conditioning is not found so much in reconditioning your consciousness to something else, but to uncondition your consciousness. And this is a gradual process, but there is no destination to be reached in order to be in a position to detach. Just being on the path to enlightenment achieves that goal. Now, when it comes to taking responsibility through detachment, you'll have to forgive me, but I misspoke. I chose the wrong words. Because one of the things that's going to be discovered when awareness moves into a higher consciousness, whatever that may be, perhaps the best we can say is that it is some form of collective consciousness. But what's going to be discovered is not so much that we're taking responsibility, but that we were always responsible. Consciousness is what consciousness is. It's whatever it creates unto itself. Portions of consciousness don't know this. Some learn it and be it. Others learn it and pervert it. But mostly people learn it and forget it. But you can remember this. You, my friend, yes, you are responsible. You can become aware of this. You can verify this through observation. It's a core of the pantheist Eastern philosophy, the only one that takes responsibility. Atheist and theist observations are observations made from a perspective terrified of the notion of this responsibility. Observations that consciousness is just random purposelessness or a creation bestowed upon created selves by a somehow separate God take absolutely no responsibility for reality. And yet you are responsible for your reality, just as every droplet of water is responsible for an ocean. When a consciousness knows this, it will know that nothing is solid or separate. The material breaks down and appears as it really is, fabric of imagination.